Right then, another customer car vlog. It's not often we really do them on a car as standard as this one, but it's quite a clean one, and it's a car that we've not had in for I don't think we've ever had one of these in for tuning. We've just done a little bit of servicing work on them. So quite a special car these really. They don't look too much and you'd probably just skip past them if one drove past you. But this is a Passat and it's got the 240 horsepower bi-turbo engine, which I still believe is the most powerful 2-litre engine fitted to any passenger car anyway. So, at least from the factory. So this came to us as just a standard car, just wanting a timing belt swap, and he wanted a remap while it were here as well. So we've not took anything off, we've just literally maintained it and tuned it. But I think this will still be a bit of an interesting video because we'll go out for a little drive and just see what the acceleration looks like, and when the customer takes it back we'll cut some bits in there to private road use. But the engine in this, the gearbox is not so special now, but the engine's pretty special, so we'll have a quick look around it and see what it does. So this engine, messy looking thing, but I'll pull that off and I'm going to regret that because it's going to take me ages to put that back. But basically the base of this engine is the same as the 187 and 184 and I think the 190 horsepower engines. It's pretty similar to them but not the same. So that's what's in like the Mark 7 Golf GTDs, the Audi A4 190s, that sort of stuff. But it's the MQB platform as they call it. But this is heavily redesigned. So looking at it from the front, it's got a much bigger charge cooler. It's got a really big air intake that goes to an airbox that's as big as where the battery and the airbox normally goes. 92mm MAF sensor, which that's even bigger than what's fitted to like the V6s and stuff like that. And then you can see the turbo's really high up, but this is the big turbo, and underneath there's a little turbo as well. So you've got, it's a sort of another sort of compound sequential type setup, and the compressor covers are water cooled on both of them. That's because it's not got an interstage cooling and stuff. So there's quite a lot going on the turbo side of things. Absolutely tons of emissions stuff going on. You've got your DPF. There's a CAT, all close coupled. You've got AdBlue, low pressure EGR, high pressure EGR. There's a flap downstream in the exhaust to bring the pressure up after the DPF. So it's got all the stuff that makes you popular at parties. That's all been left on this, and it's done 70,000 miles, and it appears to be working at 400 millibar of back pressure at full load, even with a tune on, so it's not too bad. You're going to gain a few horsepower if you took that out, but not tons. So one of the big things that's noticeable on this engine as well, this has got a CP 4.2 pump, which you normally see this on like a 3-litre V6 engine, or a 2.7 V6 or whatever, because that'd be timed with the injection on those. But on this engine, to lower the emissions at idle and stuff like that, they've timed it so they've sort of changed the angle on the pump so that you've got an injection time, a pulse when the injectors are all firing. And as well, because this is wanting so much more fuel, it's got almost twice the capacity of a normal CP4 fuel pump that's fitted to a 2-litre engine. Not an easy job to retrofit this onto a later one because the control strategy is totally different. These run a CP74 ECU, whereas the others run like a C64, which are different injectors, solenoid versus piezo, and a totally different ECU. So you can't just bolt that pump on and you've got a twice bigger pump. Otherwise, we'd do that instead of fitting the CP3 pumps. So that pump's driven by a different timing belt. It's stronger and got a different tension on there as well, which the kit's more expensive. So if somebody asks for a price on these, they are a little bit more expensive. Not any more work, but a little bit of extra stuff going on here, but not too major. Just your AdBlue related stuff. But the injection pressure on these is 2,500 bar, which for something that came out in 2015, 2016, that's a lot. I think BMWs are probably only just getting there on the newest 550Ds, and usually BMW are the first to get the highest pressure injection setup, so pretty unique on these. The injectors are very big on these. They're not the biggest that you can get, but they are very, very big. 2700 bar rail pressure sensor. Internally, the cams are totally different, but can't be bolted onto the CUAA, CUNA engines and that sort of stuff. So the older GTD engines, you can't bolt onto them, which is annoying because that'd be good. I think 0.5 mil more lift on these, but the ports on these are not like on the GTDs where they're sort of twisted and you've got a lot of swirl. They straighten things out a lot more, and you've got a lot of extra flow. Probably looking at them, it looks like twice as much, but I think it's probably 30-40%, something like that. So massive difference in intake flow and a big difference in exhaust flow as well. They've got a lot bigger ports. The pistons are lower compression. I think these are 15.5 versus 16.5, depending what engine you're talking about, comparing them to. And these have got, which is quite interesting as well, which we've looked at these pistons, and shame they're not a little bit lower in compression, but they've got a remelted lip, which is sort of the next stage in between going to a steel piston, which the newer version are the sort of most efficient engines, like the 140s, 150s that they're doing in the new stuff. They're going to have steel pistons on them, so not steel piston for strength, it's going to be steel piston for efficiency, so they can run higher compression, smaller balls and stuff. But I digress. The lip on these pistons is remelted, which is basically, in a crude way, you get a TIG torch and run around it, remelt the bowl, and then machine it, and that takes all. This is from what I've read years ago, so I might be paraphrasing, but that takes all the sodium, pushes all the sodium into the piston and brings it away from the material, so then you machine it away and you've got harder aluminium rather than the softer sodium that melts at a lower temperature. That's what I believe anyway. So that's like a nice in between a steel piston, which you're not going to have the negative of having to completely redesign the engine, because the steel piston keeps the heat in there in the combustion chamber, which causes other problems. But anyway, so they've got a bigger wrist pin in there in the piston, which means a different rod. They've got an 8-bolt crank, a crazy pendulum mount on the flywheel so that you can run this at like 1,000 RPM ticking over, a lower first gear, so literally at like 2 miles an hour you can be cruising along at 1,000 RPM, making it the most efficient. Got a 2-stage oil pump, which I think is pretty new on this sort of thing, so it's at low RPM, it's not any less efficient. And the water pump's a similar arrangement as well, but that's the same on all the other engines. The head bolts are stronger in these, the mains bolts are longer. When the engines are bored and honed, they use a torque plate on these, which most of our engines won't bother, which we don't usually do on our big builds, but there sort of is a difference in these, which I think that's more to do with, rather than strength and stuff like that, and it's more to do with the blow-by, which obviously is going to put more oil into the exhaust and cause DPF problems. So it's probably not a bad thing. The other interesting thing I didn't mention at the time, these fuel pipes, you can see they're a lot bigger than the other engines, but they're not bigger internally. These are actually thicker on the outside, and they're done with a process called auto frottage, which sounds a bit weird, but basically what they do with these, they build like an aluminium jig, machine aluminium jig that fits around the pipe, so it's each one's different, fits around there, and they put loads of pressure inside and outside, I'm assuming with a liquid, put loads of pressure around them, and then what that does, that squashes the metal and makes them even stronger. So when you're running high pressures like this, you need pipes that are made in this way. So when it's bent and then it's had that done, it makes the wall thinner but more dense. So quite an interesting thing. I'm sure stuff like this costs an absolute fortune to do, so it's pretty surprising that this engine is only fitted to these Passats originally, and then now they're finding their ways into the Ayrton and the Tiguan. So all of them 7-speed still, which really is just a six speed at the top end, but then you've got a short first gear, which is a bit annoying. But overall, very interesting engine. There's loads of other little bits, like they're going to split 2 stages of water cooling in the head, and obviously the water system is really complicated because it's got the charge cooler and the turbos and the water cooling on the AdBlue nozzle and everything. There's absolutely tons of stuff going on. We could go on forever, probably bored people to death. Everybody's just waiting for the numbers. So these should be 240 horsepower, 500 newton meters, which works at about 360 odd foot-pound. This one did 375, 380 foot-pound, 226 horsepower as it is, which, like I said, it's done 70,000 mile, dyno discrepancies and what have you, so not too far away. And then with a tune, we've managed to get 276 and 425 foot-pound of torque thereabouts. So the curves are not completely perfectly smooth. Would like to have spent a bit more time on the dyno, but usually you're spending time to get a nice dyno graph, and it makes no difference on the road anyway. You can't even feel it, see it, or it's not even there anyway. But this, as standard, is already running 2.8 bar of boost, which is ridiculous. It's only got a 4 bar map sensor on it, so we've only been able to give that a little nudge. Obviously the rail pressure is already quite high, so I've only been able to give that a little nudge as well. But the EGTs were fairly low on this as standard. I think they were only 750s or something like that, so it's not really pushed too hard. Like, we've got a brand new S4 in the yard. That's a 20 plate car with only a few thousand mile at clock, and that as standard has pushed absolutely ridiculously hard, and that's still only on a single turbo. So, but we'll talk about that in a separate video. So this still had a bit of headroom in opening the injectors a little bit wider. The opening time were already fairly small because the injectors are quite big. So we've been able to add a fair bit of fuel, a little bit of air, a little bit of rail pressure, and we've been able to get the power that we've got. I do think if you're going down the route of taking all the party pieces off, putting probably a bigger rail pressure sensor in, which I do believe these are 3,000 bar one in production, but we've not got our hands on one or tested one just yet, so we've not needed to. So you probably put that in there and a 6 bar map sensor, and I'm sure you can easily push past 300, which I know a lot of people already say that they do 300, but they already say that they do 250s standard and then 300 with a tune. So it's just got your dyno discrepancy there and the mileage issue and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm sure we can push these a little bit harder. I think this is potentially going to be one of the engines that ends up in the Arosa at some point. Literally just throw one in with a massive turbo on there, get rid of the factory charge cooler and stuff, and just see what we can do basically. Maybe run this charge cooler with ice through it or something like that. I'm not too sure. But really interesting engine. Can't wait till they start coming down a little bit in price, because I don't want to put a $5,000 engine into Arosa that's $5,000 standard, because we'll just blow it to bits. We need to do a bit of testing when it's not too expensive. But we've got a lot of work to do on the other cars we've got. The customer's coming for this one now. I'm sure he'll be happy. It drives really nice. So we'll get out on the road and see what it's like anyway. So I'll just go for a little road test. Nothing too crazy. The customer's not a boy racer, so we're not seeing how many seconds to 60 we can improve it by and stuff like that. I don't think anybody buying a Passat family bus is going to be interested in that. Although we have a lot of people with the Amaroks wanting to launch them and see how fast they are, so we shall see. But what you notice from this, like any of the modern sort of efficient diesel engines, they want to be in as high a gear as possible, as early as possible, and that's why it's got a lot of fancy stuff on it. But drives really nice and quiet, and this is a big car. I think the way knocking on 1800 kilograms, which pretty much everything that's got this engine in does, so you're not going to find one in a Audi A1 or something like that, which is a shame. But what I've found from this, you don't really need the automatic gearbox to if you want to get a move on, because like what 1200 RPM, 1400 RPM now, 6th gear, so I'll probably slow down a little bit. I'll drop it down into 5th. 5th's like 4th in most cars. So 1200 RPM there, foot flat down. By 200 RPM later, you're off. No messing, not slow at all, but I'll put it back into sport this time. Get down to like 30. That's what most of it, 30 to 60. That's not slow. So to do the motorway overtake 50 to 70. So again, this is just effortless to get to sort of legal speeds. Obviously, we'll leave the above speed limit stuff to the customer and see what he reckons, but drives really, really well. Just got the power whenever you need it. I do think this probably spools at the low RPM when you put your foot down. It probably spools a little bit quicker than the bi-turbo 3 litres. I've been driving RA6 to work and back for a while, and if you put that into manual and stamp it at 1000 RPM, you don't get cracking as quick as that does. Let's get a little tickle and see what it's like. No hesitation there. Like I say, I do think it changes down a little bit too aggressively. There's one thing to note about this, and compared to the 3 litres, they rev really high. They'll rev probably to 5200 RPM as standard in sport or manual. This wants to change up more like 4600 RPM, which I'd assume is because the EGTs will just climb quite a bit at those sort of RPMs. That's generally on most engines we see, once you start revving it past sort of 46, 47, that's when the EGTs just climb exponentially. But this seems to keep an handle on things, and the power is sort of running away with its at them sort of RPMs anyway. It's tailing off, so there's no need to rev it more than that. You know, a squeeze. Even in manual, don't want to let you rev it past 4600, which not a problem. You've got 1400 RPM to 4600 RPM of power band. That's absolutely plenty. So anyway, this review is about an engine, not a gearbox. But yeah, it's really, really happy. The customer will be over the moon, I'm sure. Car drives really well, and in theory, with what we've done, the fuel consumption should be the same, if not a tiny bit better, as long as he keeps his foot out of it. Really, really happy. So thank you for watching. Hopefully Danny cuts this into something that's not boring. Cheers.